Serena Williams mocked young sports anchor years ago. Now she controls ESPN. What happened next will leave you absolutely speechless.
Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.
It was a sweltering August afternoon in 2018 at the U.S. Open Media Center, and the air conditioning struggled against the New York heat as dozens of journalists crowded into the press conference room. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of reporters, eager to get their questions answered by the tennis legend who sat behind the microphone. Jessica Chen sat in the back row, clutching her press credentials with nervous excitement. At 24 years old, she was the youngest reporter in the room, working for a small regional sports network that barely had the budget to send her to cover the tournament. Her press pass was laminated with cheap plastic that was already starting to peel at the edges. But Jessica didn't care. This was her chance to prove herself in the world of sports journalism that had been her dream since childhood. Serena Williams commanded the room with the presence that only comes from decades of dominating the sport she loved. Her multiple Grand Slam titles had earned her the right to speak with authority about tennis and life. But success had also created a protective shell around her, one that sometimes made her impatient with questions she deemed unworthy of her time. The veteran reporters in the front rows knew exactly how to phrase their questions to get meaningful responses. When the moderator finally called on Jessica, her heart raced as she stood up from her seat in the back row. "Ms. Williams," she began, her voice slightly trembling with nerves. "I'm Jessica Chen from Valley Sports Network. I wanted to ask about your thoughts on how younger players can break into the professional tennis circuit, especially those who don't have access to elite training facilities." The question was thoughtful and relevant, but Serena's expression immediately shifted to one of visible annoyance. Serena looked Jessica up and down, taking in her bargain store blazer, her nervous demeanor, and the small network logo on her press badge. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying an edge that made the entire room uncomfortable. "What network did you say you were from again? Valley Sports Network?" Jessica repeated, her confidence already beginning to waver under Serena's intense gaze. "I know it's a smaller outlet, but I think our viewers would really appreciate your perspective on accessibility in tennis." Serena let out a short laugh that carried no warmth. "Honey," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "I think you might be in the wrong room. This is for serious sports journalists from legitimate networks, not student reporters or whatever it is you're supposed to be. Maybe you should stick to covering high school tennis until you work your way up to the real leagues." The words hit Jessica like physical blows, each syllable designed to humiliate her in front of the entire press corps. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as veteran reporters shifted in their seats, some looking away in embarrassment, while others pulled out their phones to document the unexpected drama. Jessica's face flushed red as she felt the eyes of dozens of professional journalists watching her public humiliation. But something in her expression suggested she wouldn't forget this moment anytime soon. "I understand, Ms. Williams," Jessica said quietly. "But I believe every story matters, regardless of the size of the platform telling it." Serena waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away an annoying fly. "Look, sweetie," she continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been dealing with real journalists for 20 years. People from ESPN, CNN, Sports Illustrated. Networks that actually matter. When you're ready to play in the big leagues, maybe we can have a real conversation. But right now, you're just wasting everyone's time, including mine." The cruelty was delivered with a smile that made it even more devastating. Jessica sat down slowly, her face burning with shame as whispers rippled through the press room. Some reporters looked sympathetic, but none were willing to risk their own access by defending a newcomer from a network they'd never heard of. Serena continued with the press conference as if nothing had happened, answering questions from established reporters with the professional courtesy she had denied Jessica. But Jessica wasn't taking notes anymore. She was planning. 6 years later, the mahogany conference room on the 32nd floor of ESPN headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut, hummed with quiet tension as the network's most powerful executives gathered for their weekly programming meeting. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the Connecticut landscape, but all eyes were focused on the woman at the head of the polished table. Jessica Chen, now 30 years old and recently promoted to senior vice president of tennis coverage, sat with the calm confidence of someone who had earned every bit of her authority. Jessica's rise through the ranks of sports media had been meteoric. After the humiliation at the US Open, she had channeled her anger into determination, working 18-hour days, taking every assignment, no matter how small, and building relationships with athletes, coaches, and industry insiders who recognized her genuine passion for sports journalism. Her coverage of emerging tennis players had earned critical acclaim, and when ESPN was looking for fresh perspectives in their tennis division, Jessica's name was at the top of the list. The meeting agenda today focused on ESPN's coverage of major tennis events, and Jessica held the kind of power that could make or break careers with a single programming decision. As she flipped through the proposals in front of her, one name caught her attention, in a way that made her pause. Serena Williams was requesting a feature documentary about her legacy and impact on women's tennis. The proposal had already been approved by lower-level executives and only needed Jessica's final sign-off. Jessica stared at the proposal for a long moment. Memories of that humiliating day 6 years ago, flooding back with crystal clarity. She remembered the laughter, the dismissive wave, the way Serena had made her feel like she didn't belong in the world of professional sports journalism. But Jessica also remembered the fire that had been lit inside her that day, the determination to prove that every story mattered and every journalist deserved respect, regardless of the size of their platform. "I have some concerns about this proposal," Jessica said, finally, her voice cutting through the conference room chatter. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. She was known for her fairness and professionalism, so when she expressed reservations, people listened carefully. "While Miss Williams has certainly had an impressive career, I think we need to consider whether this is the right time for ESPN to invest in this particular project. There are other stories that might better serve our audience." One of the junior executives looked confused. "But Serena Williams is tennis royalty. The ratings would be enormous." Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right about her impact on the sport, but sometimes the most important stories come from unexpected places, from people who might not seem significant at first glance, but who represent the real heart of what sports journalism should be about." She paused, letting her words sink in, before delivering the final blow. "I'm going to pass on this proposal." The silence in the room was deafening, as the implications of Jessica's decision became clear. Without ESPN's backing, Serena's documentary would struggle to find the kind of major network support that could give it the reach and prestige it deserved. Jessica closed the folder containing the proposal and looked around the table at her colleagues, her expression calm but determined. "Sometimes," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years of hard work and perseverance, "the people you dismiss today become the ones who control your tomorrow." Let's move on to the next item. 3 days later, Serena Williams would receive a phone call from her agent, explaining that ESPN had passed on her documentary proposal. The agent would struggle to find alternative networks willing to take on a project that the industry leader had rejected. And Serena would spend the next several months wondering what had gone wrong. What she didn't know was that in a conference room 32 floors above the Connecticut landscape, a young reporter she had once humiliated was now the person deciding which tennis stories deserved to be told.
What would you do in this situation? Comment below. Have you experienced karma like this? Share your story. Who do you think was right? Team Jessica or Team Serena?